Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we have a collaboration beer to have a look at, and this time it's a three-way collaboration. So this beer is 2/3 Swedish, 1/3 Canadian. The home brewery is Swedish, and all three of the breweries involved in this beer have featured on the channel before, albeit it's been a while since I had a beer from the home brewery or from the Canadian one. So nice to have all three of these breweries back on the channel. Hopefully it's an interesting beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for the home brewery then, we are going to head up towards the Gothenburg area, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when it comes to the Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition. And for this review then, we are going to head to nearby Jonsered, which is home to Poppels Bryggeri, who are one of the bigger by volume craft breweries here in Sweden. So yeah, this one is called Escape The Mothership. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy Double Imperial, whatever you want to call it, IPA. But yeah, this beer is brewed in collaboration with All In Brewing, who are one of the numerous gypsy breweries operating in Gothenburg, and it's also in collaboration with Collective Arts Brewing, who are from Hamilton in Ontario over in Eastern Canada. So yeah, definitely curious to see how this one turns out. This beer was released on May the 4th. Hence the name Escape The Mothership. There is a little bit of a space theme going on there, but I think it's also a bit of a tribute to another beer that Collective Arts do that's probably one of the best bang for your buck IPAs available through Systembolaget here in Sweden, and that's called Radio The Mothership. Actually, I reviewed that beer maybe 2 or 3 years ago now in fact, but it's a lovely one and I do recommend you have a look at that. But yeah, this beer was released on the 4th of May through the Tillfällig Sortiment through Systembolaget here in Sweden, and it seems to have been received very, very well. I've heard good things about this one, so I have to say I'm very curious to see what it's like. So let's get cracking with this one then. Yeah, I think this should be pretty cool, and definitely nice to have Poppels on the channel once again, Collective Arts as well. And we had a beer not too long ago from All In Brewing actually, but it's good to see them getting their beers out there a little bit more, generally speaking. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Poppels, Collective Arts and All In Brewing, and you will no doubt see more added to those lists at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for both the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you and another one for all the Canadian beers. The Swedish one is added to all the time, the Canadian one is added to whenever I get the chance, because it is quite hard to get a hold of Canadian beers, to be honest with you. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Poppels Bryggeri first off then, since these guys are the home brewery. So Poppels Bryggeri, as I've told you before, were originally based in a town called Mölnlycke to the southeast of Gothenburg, but they're now based in Jonsered. So the brewery is named after that which was owned by Johann Poppel, who was a well-known German-Swedish brewer who spent most of his life in Varberg and Gothenburg. But he was born sometime between 1605 and 1610 in Lower Saxony in Germany, and then moved to Sweden with his family in the 1620s. He met his wife Katarina Krakow between 1624 and 1628, and he later founded Gothenburg's first brewery with her officially in 1649, but it is thought that they've been brewing since 1638. But he's also said to have written down the protocol of the city of Gothenburg in Swedish for the first time as opposed to German. But the brewery apparently remained in the Poppel family for a number of generations, and the most famous site of this brewery in Gothenburg was at Stigbergets. So yeah, you might recognise that name, Stigbergets Brewery of course. But the current brewery was founded in 2012 in Mölnlycke on a site that was apparently owned by the Poppel family, hence why they decided to use the name. But the brewery is owned by 15 beer lovers. There's a few different ones in there, but the main guys are Daniel Granat, Thomas Kaldon and Thomas Fielman. They're the main sort of drivers behind the company, but they aim to focus on the pairing of their beers with food. And you'll find that they've got some really interesting kind of notes and things like that on the can, which I'll show you a little bit later. But the current head brewer, of course, is Daniel Granat, who's a bit of an experimenter and perfectionist. So he brews most of his new beers 4 or 5 times before he allows them to be released. But apparently he also reads a lot of different beer blogs and things like this and keeps up to date with many of the new beers and brewing techniques and things like this. So it's pretty cool, actually. He seems to be a very kind of dedicated guy, I guess we could say, but very, very knowledgeable. I'd love to do an interview with him on the channel for one of the Meet the Brewery segments, so I will need to see about organising that the next time I make it up to Gothenburg. I should do that, because Daniel has watched quite a few of my older videos, from what I understand. But yeah, in 2015 they moved to a new site in Jonsered, which is out to the east of Gothenburg, and this place has a restaurant and a shop, and they also boast the title of being Sweden's largest producer of organic beer. And as of May 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, these guys have produced 105 different kinds of beer. So yeah, quite an impressive brewery, this one. I've had some really nice beers from these guys. If you are looking at some of the beers, the Russian Imperial Stout is a very good one. Some of the double IPAs have been really nice as well. But if you ever come across the beers from their Project series that they do, and I've not seen one of those in a wee while actually, but if you have a go at some of their Project beers, those are always very, very nice actually. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Poppels Bryggeri for the moment. Again, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the website or the Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to look at all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's go on to the other Swedish brewery then, All In Brewing. So All In Brewing, as I mentioned to you earlier, are a gypsy brewery based in Gothenburg, and these guys started up in 2012 under the leadership of Pelle Frost. So they plan to have their own brewery in the future, but right now they're brewing all their beers at other breweries, mainly in the Gothenburg area. But in the early years they travelled Europe making collaborations with other breweries, but recently, or more recently within the last few years, they've been brewing most of their beers in Sweden. But they started brewing with Brewski in Helsingborg, and one of their brewers, Lucas, was working full-time at Brewski, brewing both the All In beers and the Brewski beers, and then later they were brewing for a while at West Coast Bryggeri. But at one point they had 3 brewers. This was Lucas Munreid, who is now with Stigbjerg's Bryggeri in Gothenburg, and then Victor and Andreas. And they'd always been into these big kind of fruity, hoppy American IPAs, but they also liked the Imperial Stouts as well. So Victor and Andreas were the original guys, and I believe they're still the sort of original brewers, and they're still doing the brewing from what I understand. And Lucas was headhunting from another brewery, but then he was made the head brewer when he was brought in. But a lot of the recipes that were there, that were made under during Lucas's time, were done as sort of collaborations, if they like. But in 2015, they were voted one of the top 100 breweries in the world by Rate Beer, which is pretty impressive when you consider how American dominated it is. And then in 2019, they were aiming to scale their brewing up to around 100,000 litres, while Pelle is making efforts to get the beers exported to Europe. And now, as I said earlier, Lucas Munreid moved on to work for Stigbjerg's. But every year, they have their own beer festival in Gothenburg, which is called the All In Beer Fest. I do need to go and check that out at some point. But some of the All In guys have 2 bars in Gothenburg together with Dugges Bryggeri, and these are the brewers' beer bar. So I would recommend that you check those ones out. Tredje Långgatan, from what I remember, is the original one, so I would recommend that you go and check out that one and then check out the other one as well. But as of May 2021, these guys have produced around 65 different kinds of beer, and like I say, they are a very, very well respected brewery. And it's only recently, maybe within the last year or so, that their beers have started to appear again, because it was very difficult actually to get a hold of stuff from All In Brewing. From what I remember, I wasn't seeing them releasing anything through the Lokales Moskalegd, and I think even in Gothenburg actually it was a little bit difficult to get a hold of their beers for a wee while. So they really seem to be kind of pushing things now and going for it, which is great. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about All In Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's move on to the Canadian side of things then. Yeah, this is a little bit of a longer brewery history section, if you like, but yeah, this is our last one. So Collective Arts, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Hamilton in Ontario, and they were founded back in 2013 by Matt Johnson and Bob Russell. So Matt comes from a marketing background, and he worked in the beer industry for a number of years, and he worked with Moosehead, who are one of the very well-known Canadian macro lager producers. But Bob came from a branding background and ran his own businesses. But the brewery are based in the former brewery of Lakeport Brewing Company, which is leased from the Hamilton Port Authority, and they share this facility with Nickelbrook Brewing, and this is known as the Arts and Science Brewery. But the current brewmaster at the brewery is Ryan Morrow, and he's also the brewmaster for Nickelbrook Brewing as well, from what I understand, for whom he's worked since 2006. But the whole idea behind this brewery is apparently to bring together local artists, musicians, filmmakers and photographers through the sociability of craft beer. And they've got a number of art initiatives, and over the years 650 artists and musicians have been paid by the brewery for their contributions, so hence the name Collective Arts. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting idea that they've got, and they've got a really interesting tap room, but from what I understand it is actually very, very small and it's difficult to get a seat in. So I think from what I've heard from some of the Canadian beer tubers is that there is talk of them making like a bigger tap room at some stage, so we need to see how that goes. But as of May 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 105 different kinds of beer. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Collective Arts Brewing and all of the breweries together. But if you want to learn more about Collective Arts, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to see about all those different beers. But yeah, let's crack on then and get this beer open. So as you can see, the can artwork on this one is pretty typical of what you would expect from Dugas Bryggeri. I think, not Dugas Bryggeri, from Poppels Bryggeri. Blah, that's terrible. They're from Poppels Bryggeri. But yeah, they've got this lovely kind of typeset thing here, which I really like. Poppels always have some really, really nice labels, and I do like the fact that they've used one of Collective Arts' artists for this as well. But there you can see Poppels Bryggeri. This is kind of the Poppels Bryggeri symbol here on the text, and then on these little bits here you can see there is the Collective Arts one, and then underneath that you have the All In Brewing one here, and there's a bit of text on the back here. As I said earlier, they always give you, with the Poppels beers, they always give you these lovely kind of food pairing notes, so they're recommending that you pair this one with chicken, kimchi or beets. So beets is an interesting one, wouldn't have thought that. But yeah, it says this beer is a uppskruvat, messed up, like screwed up kind of thing. So this is a screwed up IPA with a massive hops and a full body, even with a market bitterness for a mafic mouthfeel. I don't know what mafic is actually, but this beer is the New England style, which means that it is sort of clean and juicy, but with very soft. But with much aroma and flavour. So this style is intended to be drunk fresh, as fresh as possible. So therefore, it should be stored cold and not aged, basically. But in this beer, you always get a comment on these beers as well from Daniel Granat, the head brewer, which is pretty cool. And it says here, he's saying, in this beer, we've worked with a combination of hop sorts that give a clear character in both character and taste. Most of the hops that we have give a full, Mengden, so basically the amount of hops that we have used give it a full hoppy beer with tropical tones. So yeah, it just tells you that this is a it tells you as well that this is a triple collaboration, as you can see on the side here, and it mentions here too, this beer was planned and brewed under COVID times and the whole process took place online. Basically says, but at the same time we've retained our etiquette and wanted to do something different through the brewing of this beer. So yeah, that is pretty cool actually. I hope my translation was decent there, but yeah, it's a little bit difficult doing it so spontaneously, but you know, you get the idea. But you can see gold top can on this one, 440 millilitres. I paid, it was either 45 or 50 Swedish kroner. This is a double IPA, so I want to say it was 50 Swedish kroner. So this beer cost about €5, about £4.50 sterling then in that case, and then somewhere in the region of like $6 American, I would say. So I guess in Canadian that might translate to like $7.50 or something, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, nice looking beer this one, 8% New England Hazy, double Imperial IPA, whatever you want to call it. This was released on the 4th of May through Systembolaget, so let's get it out and we'll get on with a tasting. The Escape The Mothership double IPA from Poppels Bryggeri in Jonsered in collaboration with All In Brewing, Gypsy Brewery in Gothenburg and Collective Arts from Hamilton in Ontario in Eastern Canada. So I think that'll do to take a look at the beer and have a look at the aroma. Let me just check that this is lined up for my OCD so that I'm happy. There we go. But yeah, it looks very nice, I have to say. So yeah, as you can see, this beer has poured, before the head disappears, it's poured with maybe a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. If we shine the light through this one, it's got a lovely kind of, I'd say it's got quite a bright yellow colour, this one. It looks a bit brighter on the camera than it is to the naked eye, but it's got a lovely, it does have a lovely kind of bright yellow colour to it. So I would describe this one as being kind of akin to a mango juice. I always enjoy comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what their appearance reminds me of. Remember that the colour of these beers is dependent on 1, the type of malts you use, and 2, the length of your wort boil. A beer like this is going to undergo a wort boil of between 70 and 90 minutes normally, but the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But it is dependent in the first instance on what malt types you're using actually. But yeah, the level of haziness in this one as well, it is a little bit more like a kind of natural haze that's in this one, to be honest with you. But the level of haze depends on your oak content and your wheat content, and that varies from brewery to brewery. But you know, even so, theoretically speaking, as you go up the alcohol scale, you should kind of get a little bit more haze out of it. But quite often, a beer that's like this one that has a little bit more of a natural hazy vibe to it, this might indicate that this beer is a little bit more that is a little bit more kind of barley malt leaning than oat being too oaty or wheaty. It could also have just been filtered a little bit, so who knows. But yeah, lovely looking beer, this one. Nothing overly surprising about it in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. But yeah, certainly looks the part of a New England IPA for sure. But let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. Ooh, I think from the aroma, this one comes across as being quite oaty leaning. Yeah, it's got a real smoothness to it, this one. So I think this one's probably quite oaty leaning, and also there's quite a bit of barley malt in that as well. It doesn't smell too bitey and wheaty, but it's got a big bready smoothness to it, and also some oaty character as well actually. So that's that is pretty interesting, I have to say. So that's my first impression of it. It's got a good bit of juiciness to it. It doesn't smell too bitter. They did say that this beer had quite a bit of bitterness in it, so we'll need to see that when we taste it. But the malty side of things, this is a very sort of bready leaning IPA in my opinion. And I've said before, I think there's a few different directions you can take a New England IPA in. They can be a little bit more yeasty and farmhousey. They can be sort of rye leaning and grainy. They can be wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, or they can also have a little bit of a kind of brown sugary element to them as well. So I really like how that kind of goes together with these beers. You can always get some real diversity within the New England style. But as I've said in other reviews, I think recently there's been too many breweries brewing all of these New England IPAs, and there's not been enough variety in terms of having West Coasters and black IPAs, red IPAs and rye IPAs and stuff like this. But we are starting to see the beer scene diversify a little bit more again, thankfully. But yeah, the aroma of this one is nice. So let's try and break that down for you a little bit. So yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer is a lovely, soft, white bready character. I really like how that pieces together in this one. But yeah, big, soft, white bready note in this one. It almost smells a little bit sort of dusty in a sense, the white bread. It's almost that you get the flour off of it, which is really quite interesting. So yeah, the flowery character that you get off of this is really, really interesting for sure. But yeah, a lovely big soft white bready character to this one. A little bit of a bread crusty element to it as well underneath, which I think works very, very well. But yeah, you can smell a little bit of the oaty smoothness on top of that. You perhaps get, you do perhaps get just a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original sort of butter candy thing in this one. The kind of brown sugary elements there, that's usually the alcohol that's given you. There is a wee bit of a straight up sweet caramel, which is quite interesting too. So yeah, wee touch of straight up sweet caramel, a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original kind of note in the middle of the nose. But yeah, the malt base for me is quite straight shooting, and in my experience with Poppels, you get some solid beers. Like quite a lot of the stuff from Poppels I've had is very straight shooting, but it's just really well crafted. That's kind of how I would often interpret the Poppels beers. They did a really good New England IPA a wee while back actually, yeah, some of the project beers that Poppels do are really just awesome. But yeah, this one really does come across as very straight shooting, and I think that's going to serve it well when we actually come to taste it. You do get a little bit of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose in this beer as well, but overall this is a very soft, white bready leaning New England IPA for me. On the hoppy side of things then, there's a little bit of a kind of earthy character to it. You get a wee touch of earthiness out of it. There's some nice big floral aromaticity in there as well. And you get that when you take in the aroma a little bit more deeply, but there's also a wee bit of a kind of grassy, zesty quality in there as well. So yeah, the green component of this one comes across as quite fresh, but it doesn't come across as being the most bitter of beers actually. Yeah, I really like how that kind of adds into the beer too. But on the fruity side of things, it's got a really nice, it's got a little bit of a kind of more prominent passion fruity note to it. You get a lovely juicy mango out of this one as well, maybe some kind of apricot-y characters too. I'm trying to figure out if there's a wee bit of an orangey component to this. Yeah, there maybe is a wee touch of an orangey, a light kind of tangerine note to this one. I always like to play guess the hops with these beers, but I'm really not sure with this one exactly what this could be. Could it be like a little bit of Victoria's Secret or something? Because it's got a wee bit of complexity to it. I don't think it's Idaho 7 because it doesn't seem quite complex enough for that. But it does feel like there's maybe newer hops in this one than some of the other ones I've had, because I remember the last time I had one of the last times I had an IPA, it was Citra and Mosaic, and it was really obvious. But I wonder exactly what this one could be. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, passion fruit, a little bit of quite a juicy mango note to it, a little bit of an apricot and pineapple, and maybe just a little touch of an orangey note to it. So yeah, interesting aroma, this one for sure. But I think it's about time we try this one, because we've had a longer history section and stuff. But yeah, let's go for it then. So this one is the Escape the Mothership, an 8% New England Hazy Double Imperial IPA, whatever you want to call it, brewed at Poppels Bryggeri in Jonsered, close to Gothenburg, in collaboration with All In Brewing, a gypsy brewery in Gothenburg, and then also with Collective Arts Brewing from Hamilton in Ontario over in Canada. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that's pretty solid. That is pretty damn solid. Yeah, just say thumbs up to all three of the breweries involved in this one actually. Yeah, bite to it as well, which is kind of interesting. I do find this one to be a little bit boozy, but it is nice. I do like this. Let me just line that up again. There we are. So yeah, where do we go with this one? Yeah, the aroma in this beer and the flavour kind of match up pretty well. I would definitely say that about it. So it has a bit of booziness to it, as I say, but it's got a wee bit of a it's got a boozy bite to it. But other than that, when the flavour kind of mellows out a little bit, it becomes a very soft and kind of, it's juicy IPA actually, but the booziness lingers in this one in the middle of your palate. So that's interesting with this one, and it is lighter on the mouthfeel, so that's maybe why the booziness comes across quite as strong as it does. So yeah, that's food for thought. That is food for thought. Interesting for sure. But yeah, let's try and break down the flavour a little bit more, because I've given you my first impressions. But straight away with this beer then, you can feel a nice, smooth, sort of soft, white bready backbone there. You can absolutely get that with this beer. So yeah, lovely, smooth, soft, white bready backbone on this one, which I really like. You do get a little bit of a kind of bread crusty element in this one, and sitting on top of that soft white bready character, you definitely get a wee bit of the you get a little bit of the kind of oaty smoothness sitting on top of that as well. But in the very centre of your palate, as I kind of picked up on before, you get a wee bit of that. There's a sort of circle in the middle of your tongue where you get sort of Werther's Original butter candy type flavour to it. And then in the very centre of your palate, there's a teeny little hint of a sweet caramel. But I would actually say that the brown sugar in this beer really leans more towards that kind of butter candy, Werther's Original sort of thing. It really is a very straight shooting beer, this one. And as I said earlier, I've always found with these Poppels beers that they're, you know, remarkably straight shooting, but they're just well crafted, and this one's another example of that. I think that's definitely fair to say that. This beer doesn't do anything surprising, but you know, we've had so many New England IPAs these days, it's hard to do something surprising with this style. All you can really do is kind of focus on making them, you know, making them well, basically. But yeah, this one certainly ticks that box, there's no doubt in my mind about that. But yeah, on the, how do you say, on the, if we move on to the back third of your palate then, in the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a slightly doughy, bready build up there, and you can get a wee bit more of a kind of bread crusty element. But on the back third of your palate, there's a little bit more of a kind of wheaty bitiness there for sure. So the beer is definitely a bit more wheaty and bitey on that back third of your palate. On top of that as well, you can get some of the kind of yeasty elements coming out of it. So I certainly like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, if you start at the back of the beer, the flavour starts a little bit taller, and you can just feel the kind of yeasty component sitting on top of the wheat. That kind of condenses down as you move further forward. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, the flavour is quite, you know, kind of squashed together in a sense. So you do get that with this beer. But as I say, it's a very bready, a soft white bready leaning New England IPA, this one. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you do have a nice little touch of earthiness there, and as you move further forward along the sides of your palate, it progressively becomes a little bit more sort of spicy and floral. I do wonder if there's a wee bit of Columbus in this. There's some of the bitterness in here is a wee bit kind of, it reminds me of what you would normally get from Columbus, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was in here. And you've got the earthiness there as well, which might well be another telltale sign. So I think there is a wee bit of Columbus in here as a bittering hop potentially. Remember, your bittering hops come in the early stage of the boil. That's your early addition hops, and as you go through the wort boil, you've got a progressive trade-off where bitterness kind of falls away and you get more flavour and aroma when you add hops in the later stage of the boil. So I think a wee bit of early addition Columbus in here for sure. But then round the front curve of the palate, there's a nice little bit of a kind of grassy quality there, and the grassiness has a wee bit of a zesty quality to it as well, which is quite interesting. So yeah, I think that covers the sort of green component of the beer, but there is a wee bit more bitterness to this beer for sure. But you would expect a little bit more bitterness in a double New England than you would in a single New England. But yeah, on the front third of your palate then, where you get all the fruity components. Border region between front third and middle third of your palate, by the way, is a little bit of a bready build up again, a wee bit of a bread crusty note, and then the base of that front third of your palate, of course, is a sort of smooth, kind of white bready element in there as well. So yeah, that definitely works out quite well in this beer too. So yeah, on top of that, of course, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. And again, the fruity notes are kind of quite similar to what I was picking up in the aroma, to be honest with you. So at the back, pardon me, Took a little bit of that down the wrong way. But at the back of that front third of your palate, a wee bit of passion fruit in there. As you move further forward, you know, this sort of pungency of the passion fruit kind of gives way a little bit, and you get more of a kind of mango-y note out of this one. Then as you move into the middle of that front third of your palate, there's a bit of apricot and a wee bit of pineapple and things. And then onto the front half of the front third of your tongue, you've got a nice kind of more light kind of tangerine element coming out of it. So yeah, you do get a wee bit of a kind of, there is quite a little bit of a kind of zesty lemony limey type quality. I do get a wee bit of lime just before you reach the very kind of tip of the tongue too. So I'm wondering if there could be a Citra in this, because Citra would give you a wee bit of the lime, but you know, you could put a bit of Motueka and a bit of Equinaut in this to give you a similar kind of thing. And I don't know, I think there could be a bit of mosaic in this one, because there's earthiness and there's a light tangerine note. But I'm trying to work, I don't know what the tropical hop in this is, I'm not 100% certain. You know, it could be a little bit of Victoria's Secret or Galaxy. You know, there's so many hops that could give you similar flavours to this. I mean, El Dorado would be another one. I don't know what the tropical hop in this, but I think there is a bit of Columbus and a bit of mosaic in this one for sure. I wouldn't be surprised. There could be a few other things in it as well, but I'm not certain. But I do think a bit of mosaic, and I think there might be a wee bit of Columbus in this beer. Yeah, because of the spiciness. But then again, with all these high alpha acid American hops, if you add them early in the boil, you're going to get a wee bit more spiciness out of them. So bear that in mind. But yeah, I think that kind of covers the flavour profile of this beer quite nicely. It's quite a straight shooting, just big, you know, kind of nice bitey, and bready leaning New England Double for me. So yeah, interesting stuff. In terms of the mouthfeel then, to round off the review, what can we say about this? I mean, I would say this beer, for a double IPA, it does lean towards the lighter side of things on the mouthfeel. I would say that this one's right in the middle of the spectrum in terms of mouthfeel. Smooth carbonation, a bit of wetness and a slight slickness to it as well. In terms of bitterness, I think it's maybe about 50 IBUs this one. Could be a little bit more than that, maybe even pushing 60. But remember, IBU count is my weakest point of beer reviewing, so take what I say on that with a pinch of salt. I've called the IBUs wrong in beers a good few times before. It happens. But yeah, in terms of the in terms of the bitterness, I think that suits it a bit, to be honest. But the fruity side of the beer for me, it's got a juiciness to it, a wee bit of slickness in there. You've got some softer tropical notes that come out the further into the aftertaste you go, but you do have a kind of stronger citrusy component to this beer as well, which I think also suits it. But yeah, I think that kind of rounds off this review quite nicely actually. So yeah, this one kind of reflects what I've had from Poppels before. It's quite a light, drinkable beer, but it's also well crafted. This one, it's got a good bit of bite to it, this as well. So yeah, thumbs up to Poppels and All In and Collective Arts for this one. This one's quite an interesting collaboration. So yeah, I think we can leave it there. So yeah, this one was the Escape the Mothership, an 8% hazy New England Double Imperial, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Poppels and All In Brewing in the Gothenburg area here in Sweden, and Collective Arts from Hamilton in Ontario over in Canada. So let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from all three of these breweries. We will return to them, no doubt, at some point in the near future. But yeah, this was an interesting beer to review. I hope you guys enjoyed my take, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and thanks for watching.